All right. Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. I know it's a big news day, and I know you were all hoping the Pope would be here, but he could not make it down to the basement. So, my name is Christy Split. That's Christy with a CH and a Y, and my last name is Split, like banana split, but with two T's. Hopefully that does the trick, Peter. I'm the External Affairs Director for the Oregon League of Conservation Voters, and the main part of my job, especially during the legislative session, is that I direct the Oregon Conservation Network. We have some of our members up here today, but we have over 40 members statewide from areas as diverse as Charleston on the coast to La Grande in the desert, Portland in the north, and all the way down to the Rogue River Valley and Ashland in the south. So I wanted to just let you know a little bit about the Oregon Conservation Network, and then we'll turn it over to a representative or two from each of our priorities. Our coalition works together to pass pro-conservation bills, protect our unique quality of life, and ensure a better Oregon for our children. That's the mission that unites us all. We don't agree on everything, but when we do agree, it means something. And we agree on these 4 principles being the most important things that we can work on together this session. We're honored to be joined by 3 legislators today. You see one of them here, a doctor who's an expert on health and public health. We also have an expert on energy policy coming down and an energy on water policy. So I'm really thrilled that people who know these issues well agree with us on these priorities. We also have 2 Oregonians here today that came from a distance to be at the Capitol to share a business perspective and also a conservationist perspective from kind of outside the lobbyist world, if you will. I think the bottom line that those 2 will bring to the table is that what's good for the environment can also be good for the economy. So we're going to be a little bit in a different order than I'd intended, so please forgive me if I screw up at all. But I wanted to first of all welcome up Senator Alan Bates, and probably not his constituent, but a close Southern Oregon neighbor, John Ward, with the Rogue Fly Fishers. Senator Bates will come up first, and then Mr. Ward. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Well, good morning, and thanks for having. Jackie, welcome. We're just getting started here. I know you're really hobbled right now, so we'll get you back up here in a minute.
Well, you should see the other guy, though.
Actually, I did, Jackie, and he didn't look that bad. Anyway, just real quickly, I'm going to talk about one small part of what we're trying to do in this session as far as the environment is concerned, and this is an area of which I have unfortunately had to become somewhat expertise because it's happening so much in my area, and that's suction dredging of the Rogue River and other rivers around it for gold. This was not a big issue for us over the last 8, 9, 10 years because there were a few people doing it. There weren't that many out in the river. You'd occasionally see somebody. And for those of you who haven't seen this done, it's a device in which you have a float, and on top of that float you have a gasoline motor. Then you have a suction device down on the bottom of the river that's 4 to 10 inches around you. Suck up gravel, run it through a sluice box, and try to get gold out of it. From probably something like 150, 200 permits a year being issued by DEQ, in the last 4 to 5 years, it's grown to almost 2,000. Now, that's spread over some rivers in our area, but for the most part, it's in the Rogue River. It's in Josephine and Jackson County and some up in Roseburg, and some others are scattered around the state. But this huge increase in number of dredgers is what has us concerned as environmentalists wanting to protect our fisheries and wanting to protect our waters. California put a moratorium on dredging about 4 years ago and have extended that permanently until they get more information from their Fish and Wildlife Department about how it affects fisheries there. We do know there are some negative effects from it, from how it affects the gravel and the insects living in the gravel, because those insects are important for coho and steelhead and salmon and trout that are native to the areas. We don't know enough about it right now, but we're going to find that out very quickly. We're getting studies from California, we're getting information from DEQ. And because of the acceleration of this process and how much is going on in our area, we know we have to step up and find out what the effect on the rivers is and how we're going to control that activity going on. I'm not asking at this point for a complete ban of this in Oregon as they have in California, although I think that might have been a wise thing to do because they're doing a careful study on it. We're looking at closing down certain parts of the rivers which we think are most susceptible to damage until we know more. And that's going to be something we'll be working through Senator Dingfelder's committee. We'll be gathering information. We'll be making wise decisions. This is going to be a red-hot issue, I want to tell you that, in our area of the woods. Senator Atkinson, who I actually serendipitously talked to this morning, actually backed away from it because there was a recall on him for even suggesting we look at this. So in Josephine County, which is where he's from, I'm from Jackson, it was something that became very, very hot topic very quickly. Friday morning talk shows down there are talking about it already, and it's something that people get very excited and worked up about. So it's something we're going to have to walk our way through. We're going to have to get good science. We got to know what the policy is supposed to be. Then we have to take action. I'm not interested in waiting a year or 2 or 3. I think this has reached a point with 2,000 people out there and maybe more that we take care of this. We also know there's an issue between the permits. DEQ issues one permit and State Lands issues a second permit. There's a gap of 500 permits here. Now, for some reason, that gap indicates that they either aren't out there dredging, they bought one permit but not the second one, or people are out there dredging illegally. There's no enforcement of any of this. There's no money for enforcement. The only time anything's looked at is somebody comes in and complains about a particular dredger. So we need to fix these things. We need to protect our rivers. We need to protect, from my point of view, the Rogue River especially, but other rivers in Oregon need to be looked at from the same point of view. And I'm willing to listen to everything on this. But frankly, from what I've seen, when I see the plumes, when I see what's going on as far as mercury being released in the rivers, when I think of what that gravel is being worked over after the billions of dollars we spend trying to maintain salmon runs and steelhead runs to allow this practice to continue the way it is right now, I think for me is beyond the pale and something has to be taken care of. I'm not closed to some dredging in some areas, but you're going to have to prove to me that it's safe to do, not assume that it's safe to do, and hope that it is. We got to know. So I'm looking forward to working with Senator Dingfelder, wherever she is, on this important issue. And I want to see some resolution this session. I don't want it kicked down the road again. I want some resolution this session to protect our rivers. So I'll stop there. Senator, do you want to pick it up now?
Thank you.
Mr. Ward talk about that same priority, and then can we have you come
Sure.
back? Okay, thank you. I'm really excited.
Hi, Jackie.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, I'm John Ward, the Conservation Chair for the Rogue Fly Fishers, and so I'm familiar with the Rogue, but really what's being proposed is state scenic waterway protection across the state, from the Grand Round all the way to the Sandy and down into southwestern Oregon as well. If you're a fish coming up, whether it's Rogue or almost any of them, if you had a choice between a state scenic waterway and an active dredging area, I don't think there's any question in your mind. What are the choices that, or the observations that lead the fish to say, hey, if I'm going to lay my eggs, I want to put them in a spot, perhaps on a tail-out area where the oxygen flow through the water to the eggs that I've laid will maintain them. I don't want to put them where there's toxic materials being stirred up in the water, whether it's mercury or lead or chromium or other things. Just the process of dredging has to vacuum up all of the gravel that's in the particular hole that you're trying to gather gold from. And in the process of running through your dredge, you're going to really create significant egg mortality. So that that in itself is a problem. But if you say, well, wait a minute, you're also stirring up a plume of sediment, which comes down, settles on the bottom again, and really it's decreasing the pool size, and in the process making access to the gravels for spawning purposes just not very good. From your standpoint, if you're a fish, the increased noise from the dredge itself, the human activity associated with these spawning beds means that you'd probably not hang out there if you could avoid it. I've heard in the Illinois and other places about how great it is to have the salmon come up where you're dredging because you're stirring up the insects and they're feeding on the insects. Well, possibly so, but in the long run, you're really crushing, killing, displacing the food that are going to maintain them. So that free-flowing, high-quality water, which is the principal reason for suction dredging limits, the free-flowing, high-quality water, clean drinking water, are benefits that come, we think, from scenic waterways. And that's it. Who's next, Jackie?
Thank you.
This is Senator Jackie Dingfelder, who's here to talk about another of our priorities. Thank you, Senator, for being
Great,
here.
thank you. All right, so I'm Senator Jackie Dingfelder, and I chair the Senate Environment and Natural Resources Committee. I'm really pleased to be here with my colleagues and the folks who are working on the Oregon's environmental agenda this session. I'm going to speak a little bit about, on a broader scale, about the state of Oregon's water. In particular, the bill that's top priority is Senate Bill 217. But let me explain to you why this is of great importance. You probably are aware that Oregon's waterways are under increasing strain. We have growing population, changing climate, and the need to protect stream flows for endangered species. And the complexity is the challenge of meeting our future water needs. You may be familiar with the Integrated Water Resources Strategy that was adopted by the Water Resources Commission in August. This was a bill that I worked on several years ago with Representative Jensen that created a roadmap for the future of our water resources. That was a several-year process, multi-stakeholder. Was really pleased to see that process went very well. We had some excellent feedback from all different types of stakeholders from all over the state. And part of the recommendations from this integrated strategy was that we need a more sustainable funding source for our water resources programs, not just for water quantity, water quality, in-stream water rights. You're probably aware that over the past several years, our natural resource budgets have been cut to now we're less than 1% of general funds overall, less than 1%. And that's been declining pretty much ever since I've been here in the past 12 years. And in particular, the Water Resources Department really needs the tools to manage the 85,000 water rights. That's a huge amount of responsibility the state has to make sure that those water rights are used to protect stream flows, to protect agriculture, municipal water rights, and also industrial water rights. You probably know that 80% of our water rights in Oregon go to agricultural purposes. So, certainly want to make sure that farmers get the water that they need, first and foremost, that the cities get the water that they need, and obviously we want to make sure we have water in stream for fish as well. So, the cuts to the Water Resources Department in the past many years has really impacted their ability to manage these resources wisely for a number of reasons. We've been collecting data, but we don't have the staff to interpret it. So how do we know? If you can't measure, if you can't do the data analysis, how do you know if we're managing our water systems wisely? We all depend on our rivers, our lakes, our aquifers for our economy. Water is the economic engine of the state, as I'm sure you know. We don't have water, we can't manufacture, we can't grow crops, we can't provide important resources for our communities. So in order to ensure a healthy legacy for all of our waterways, we need to make sure we have the proper tools to do that. So what this bill does is it proposes a water rights management fee. This would ensure a stable funding for our, not just Water Resources Department, but our programs to properly manage our water supplies, and both for now and into the future. The fee was developed during a public process. It's a fairly nominal fee, would be $100 per water right annually, and right now that charges zero. So the only fee you pay is when you do an actual transaction with the state, and that means when you're applying for a water right, when you're transferring, if you're perfecting a water right. And once you've done that, then there's no fee. And we all know that water is more valuable than that. In essence, water in the state is free. What you're paying for is the delivery of water. Not many things in life are free, and I think we all value our water very much. So the funds will be used, as I mentioned, to properly manage Oregon's waterways, ensure that field staff are in place to resolve conflicts between water right holders. It certainly happens, and as we see declining water supplies, I think if anything we're going to see that is a more and more important aspect of the work that our state agencies do. Also fund monitoring, data collection, and analysis so fish and wildlife can flourish. Recreationalists can access stream flow information. It will make our city and county planning processes more reliable. with better information and more staff to assess water quantity and water availability, and also update information for the 85,000 current water right holders. Those are 85,000 certificates we currently have that need to be updated. One thing also I'm going to emphasize is groundwater, and I've been harping on this for many years. We have cut back our groundwater monitoring programs in the state. And many people don't know that the majority of drinking water in the state comes from groundwater sources. We tend to think rivers, lakes. It's actually aquifers in the state is how most of the municipalities in the state get their water supply. And there's hundreds of thousands of individual wells. And frankly, we've been cutting our groundwater monitoring budgets. We lose federal money because the federal USGS, the Geological Survey, has matching funds that we leave on the table every year. And these groundwater studies are of great importance to ensure that we have sustainable water supplies into the future. So with that, I'm looking forward to a robust water agenda. This is going to be, I'm dubbing this a year of water, because you probably have already seen we have a lot of water bills in my committee, but of course a very important topic. We are looking forward to a productive session and look forward to your questions.
All right, next up is Gavin Carpenter. Gavin works for I'm sorry, I just messed it up. Sequential Pacific Biofuels. I've been very obsessed with including the Pacific and everything.
Thank you.
So,
Good morning, my name is Gavin Carpenter. I'm Director of Sales for Sequential Pacific Biodiesel. Here to talk about the Oregon Clean Fuels Program and our support for removing the sunset of that program. We have Oregon's longest and largest biodiesel facility about 5 miles from here. And we produce a little bit over 6 million gallons of biodiesel per year, primarily from used cooking oil. We collect from over 7,000 restaurants in the Northwest, including New Seasons, Burgerville, Kettle Foods, Ross Market. We're strong supporters of this bill. It creates a long-term demand for lower carbon fuels. We feel that's going to create significant investment in the state of Oregon. It makes a statement that the state of Oregon will be here for lower carbon fuels, and there will be demand for that product going forward. It's not based on tax credits, not based on who wins in November, but it's a significant demand for lower carbon fuels over the next 10 years. It's something we strongly support, and we see that primarily from a jobs and an economic front for us. We also support it because Oregon-made fuels are actually less expensive than the petroleum-based ones. Pacific Ethanol in Boardman is currently producing ethanol for about 40 cents per gallon less than gasoline. Sequential Pacific Biodiesel is selling for about 20 cents below petroleum diesel, so we can compete both on an environmental front and also on an economic front. We feel that the policy is strong from the investment standpoint, also from the environmental standpoint, with the lower carbon footprint that ethanol and biodiesel both produce across the board. Sequential Pacific currently has 25 employees at our facility in Salem. We have 88 employees through our collection team as well. And it will create local jobs, and it will keep the money in the state. Currently, Oregon has 0 petroleum fuel refineries in the state of Oregon. So all of our fuel has to come from out of state, which means all of our majority of our dollars are going out of state as well. By creating this demand, it's going to create investment in the state. It's going to create jobs in the state, and it's going to create some innovation in the state of Oregon as well. So happy to take questions when we're done.
all right, so I'll do the last one pretty quickly. Representative Bailey got called into the Speaker's office. He called me at about 10:24 and said he'd get down here as soon as he could, but we haven't seen him yet, so maybe he'll scooch in at perfect timing right before we're done. Last but not least, we are also working on a policy to add more appliances to the set of appliances that we have with energy efficiency standards on them. And I'm also, Jeff Bissonet's in the back of the room, and he's the expert on this issue in addition to Representative Bailey and Senator Dingfelder. This is actually a priority of hers. I should have just had you come up.
Sure, I can.
Do you want to come up and
Sure.
just talk a little bit about this? Great, thank
Jeff
you.
can
That makes sense.
chime in if he
Just
wants.
occurred to
Jeff,
me.
do you want to come up and give me specific? Okay, so this bill is actually in my committee, and this sets new updated standards for appliances to promote energy efficiency. And this is the 4th time, I think, that I've worked on this type of legislation. You're probably saying, well, isn't this done at the federal level? For certain appliances it is, but others are not. And so the states have taken the lead. California in particular, of course, is leading the nation, and we are working closely with the state of California looking at the standards that they've adopted. As you know, they're a big chunk of the national market and world market, so we certainly want to make sure and align our standards with them. So we have 4 appliances that we're going to be looking at. The biggest one probably of interest to you are TVs, and I'm sure you know TVs are a big user of energy. And of course, if we reduce the amount of energy that an appliance is using, that's the best way to reach energy efficiency, because that means less energy that's needed to be supplied. And this is aimed at the manufacturer. That's how we've done it in the past. Certainly, we don't want to put the onus on consumers. It's the manufacturer. They have to meet these standards in order to sell in the state. We've passed, as I mentioned, 3 versions of this that's totaled millions of dollars in cost savings for energy. Hasn't been a problem. Certainly, we'll be interested to hear from the manufacturers during the hearing, but this is a very cost-efficient and effective way of reducing our energy footprint in the state of Oregon.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Yep.
Appreciate it. It's good to
So
have
maybe
somebody-
questions?
Yeah, I
I
was
don't know
just
if
gonna
anybody
say.
has any questions.
On that last one, is there a specific bill? I think you alluded to legislation in your committee, but there was no bill number on
I
that.
don't know, do we have a number yet? I don't think we do.
I just checked that there's no number
Yeah,
yet.
it's still, we're still in the works, but should be out shortly.
Quickly on the clean fuels, I don't know if there's a specific group in working against the Oregon legislation, but I've seen on my email mysterious things from a national group that I know they've been fulminating about some similar legislation in California. So I wonder if that group has made its opposition known, and whether it's basically the major oil companies. They don't identify who their sponsors are, but.
Well, I can speak to it because it's the same folks, I think, that were opposed last time. I mean, it
Less
is,
folks, actually.
yeah, it's less. There's a lot of supporters, and I don't know if anybody has a list that you probably want to share, make sure that they know that there's a lot of Oregon companies that do support this. But on the whole, I mean, last time the opposition was the petroleum industry. Obviously, it would mean they're selling less petroleum in the state. But as somebody pointed out, we are not creating a huge amount of jobs in Oregon. We don't even refine oil here. It's shipped in from Washington, as we know. So there are concerns that have been raised from Oregon groups nationally. Certainly there could be, because California and Washington has been looking at this as well. But we see it as an opportunity to expand, as you've heard, jobs here in Oregon, create innovation, and it's really the best approach for reducing carbon from our transportation sources at this point, in addition to obviously looking at alternative transportation modes.
Any other questions?
Senator Dingfelder, you might be a little premature here to ask this question since they're signing the Declaration of Cooperation for the Columbia River Umatilla Solutions team on Wednesday morning. But in regarding that, would you support efforts that comes out of that team?
I've been working very closely with the Oregon Solutions process, and I've read through all the materials, and I'm very aware. Unfortunately, it'll be in Portland, so won't be able to be there for the signing. I have been really pleased with the process so far. I think that the governor's office taking the lead and initiating that Oregon consensus process, I think, was the right approach, because there were a lot of unanswered questions that needed attention. Everything I've heard out of the process has been positive, certainly until we see the final proposals, whether that's going to be in funding packages or legislation. My understanding is it's more towards the funding, looking at funding options. But I do know that they've been trying to look at a balanced approach, and certainly ways that we can expand, agricultural production in the Umatilla, but make sure we do it in a way that's not impacting our water resources or fisheries habitat.
I think we probably have time for one more question, but I know there's another group waiting to get in here. So,
Nothing on section dredge?
any questions on? Anything on the section dredge mining?
You
or
should ask Senator Bates a
Scenic
question.
Waterways
I'm tired of hearing from me.
How did you select the rivers for SB 401? How was that process done?
The initial look at it was from the point of view of a certain amount of how those rivers look now, And they're beautiful sections of our rivers. I know the ones in southeast Oregon or southwest Oregon the best, of course. But also, these are the areas that appear to be areas most hit by the new permits coming out. These are the areas that there's more suction dredging going on. And, you know, there's some areas you can stand and see, you know, look down the river and see 20 people suctioning. And it is not something that you want to look at all the time. It interferes with rafters coming down. It interferes with homeowners along the river. They don't want to have that noise going on all the time. And we've got to find out what's doing the fisheries too. And there's huge questions here. Moving that gravel around, there's two different types of gravel, one that moves easily in the winter flows, others that don't, and that's what the salmon usually like to put their eggs into. If you disrupt those, they become easier to move, so you lose more eggs. There's all kinds of issues here, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. Probably shouldn't use that phrase. We're going to get to the bottom as quickly as we can and make some changes, because we really need to. And there's several ways you can go about doing it. The scenic rivers is probably the best, because that would really let you do segments of the river that are most important to protect. And it ties into what we've done already. That law's been in place for 30 years, 40 years. Hasn't been actually had a new river placed on it for many, many years. It's time to look at this and take a look. You know, we're not talking a lot of water. We're talking about very sensitive water. Right now in Oregon, about 0.3%, less than 1% of the water in Oregon is protected by state scenic waters. And if we made all the changes we're suggesting, it would go to about 0.5%. It's just a fraction of the water in Oregon. But it's very important water for salmon, steelhead, and we want to protect those waters.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to clear out of here for the press conference waiting outside. So thanks for getting out of here as quickly as you can, friends.